Welcome to the Data Product Management in Action podcast, created and executive produced by me, Scott Hurlman, and brought to you by Soda, your best friend in data quality and contracts tooling. We created this podcast to serve as a place for actual practitioners bringing product management practices to data, whether that is to AI and ML, data products, platforms, or everything else in data, right? And it's to dig into the nitty-gritty of product management in data, but in fun and dynamic conversations. It's not just lift and shift from software product management. We have a great set of hosts for you that are also practitioners, so they can really get into those specifics and dive deep and get you the information you want to know rather than just high level, here is what a data product is. This is about cutting through the noise of data product management to drive towards actionable insights, hence the actual podcast name, Data Product Management in Action. So sit back and enjoy another awesome conversation.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Data Product Management in Action podcast. My name is Nick Zarvotis and I'll be your host for today. With me is Ganesh Prasad from Salesforce. Ganesh, hi, how are you?
Hey Nick, thanks for having me. Very excited to be part of the show.
Super excited for our conversation. Ganesh and I had a quick catch up last week to kind of talk a little bit about our backgrounds, and I'm really excited for the conversation we're about to have. So first things first, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, your kind of origin story as a data product manager?
Sure. My name is Ganesh. I am a senior product lead at Salesforce within our data analytics division. I have 8+ years of experience working on various data-related roles. I have been a data product manager for the last 5 years. Very passionate about the intersection of data and product and love that space. I also lead a product management community of practice within the data analytics division at Salesforce. Prior to Salesforce, I have worked extensively at MasterCard. That's where I actually started out as a data scientist, and then I grew to become a program manager and then eventually a product manager. During my tenure at both MasterCard and Salesforce, I have worked on various types of products, internal products, external products, taking products from concept to launch or taking existing products into scaling them. And working on all of these different types of products has taught me a lot on what it means to be a good data product management. So I'm excited to share some of this knowledge of this.
Awesome. I love that. And for me, one of the things that interests me the most when I meet other data PMs is that story of how did you actually end up in the profession? For me, it was kind of accidental. Like I was doing the work and then I found out that actually there's a job title for what we're doing and it's called product management. And then a few years later, figured out that, within that, there's a specialization of data and machine learning product. So for you transitioned from data science at MasterCard into product. So tell us a little bit more about what that journey looked like, how, I guess, intentional or accidental it was, and I guess what it's overall felt like. What's made you stick around with product? Or are you not sure you will?
Sure. Actually, even my journey was a little accidental. When I actually started transitioning from a data scientist into the product world, I didn't even know what product management was. And I was not at that time, I didn't even know that I wanted to be a product manager. Definitely feel differently now. When I actually started my career at MasterCard, I had my own defined projects of building analytical reports, building models and all that stuff as a data scientist. But I was also involved in a lot of other side projects. I was very vocal about the things that we could improve in the team compared to what is the state of the art in the industry. And I was pretty vocal about expressing my thoughts. And I was lucky enough to have leaders who just gave me the space and opportunity to go and implement whatever I had ideas on. And I started building some of these things. So they started trusting me and my abilities to own things, lead things. And they started giving me more and more of additional work in addition to my day job, such as evaluating startups that we can integrate or partner with, running hackathons, running educational series and stuff. So in fact, at one point, I ran hackathons that had like 1,000 to 2,000 participants within Mastercard. So that was pretty big impact work that I was doing in addition to my job as my side job. And I actually got a lot of confidence that I could do some things and own things that are beyond what I'm typically defined to do. And that's where my leaders also started pushing me to say that I can do beyond what just a typical data scientist or a developer would do, and started asking me to explore some of these program management, product management opportunities. And my EVP actually went on to start the AI team at Mastercard. And I wanted to be part of his team. I had a very nice working relationship with him, and I just wanted to be part of that space. And then he told me he wanted to offer me this role of the program manager on the team. And I signed up because I just wanted to be part of that team. And that's how my transition from being a data scientist into the product world started. And my role there was to figure out various business use cases where we could start applying AI within Mastercard, and how to build prototypes of that with the data scientists to actually make an impact on the business. When I started this role, I did not know what I was doing. It was a very common imposter syndrome where when I was in engineering, I clearly could see what I was building and could measure the outcomes. But in this role, I felt like I could not clearly understand what I was doing. But I think eventually I started taking a few courses. I started understanding what product management itself is. And then eventually I understood that I discovered myself, and I felt that my specialization is actually connecting the dots between engineering, business, product, and all of these things together to actually deliver an outcome. And I actually was really good in that. And that's why I feel like product is the perfect space for me to be in, where I can actually connect the pieces across the different parts of the company to really build something that can lead to positive outcomes. So really love product and having a role that can actually bridge the gap across the different teams.
I really love that. And for me, it's super relatable, right? The feeling like you don't know what you're doing. I mean, for me, it's still true most of the time. Like, of course, now I've kind of embraced it. I understand that often that's because we're working in new domains, or because our teammates are usually more specialized at the things that they're doing than us, who is a kind of generalist in the middle. I'm really curious, when you had that, I guess, kind of leap in confidence in what you're doing. You mentioned that you took classes, but it was also through the work you were doing. How much of that came from learning from other product managers, or did you very much have to do a mix of figure it out on your own and look outwards to courses and other resources?
I think it was a mix of both. That was the time when I started feeling the very strong need for mentorship. So I actually started asking around my own leaders to help me find mentors within the company, externally. So I started getting a few mentors who just guided me in the space. Definitely taking some courses helped. And it gave me this confidence, because when I started taking these courses, I realized that the knowledge I needed was something that I actually had. It was more that I think product is one of this very iterative process where you have to learn by making mistakes and by doing it on the job, and you just cannot get trained to do that job. But just taking those courses did give me that confidence boost that, hey, like what I do know some of these things, but there is still a lot to learn on the job. And it's one of these fields where I need to be constantly curious and constantly learn. And that's the only way to get better at the job.
That's so true. Last year I did a course on UX design, and literally half the reason was just to make sure that I've covered my bases already. Like I also learned some new stuff, but a lot of it was just to say, okay, I've learned it indirectly by Googling stuff, working on projects, but what am I missing? And then through that, you find out what it is that you're missing. I want to go back to something that you said when you kind of introduced your story and your background. You mentioned that you've worked on both internal and external facing products. And for me, this is a fascinating distinction because on the one hand, I kind of go, well, it's all the same. It just has different labels. We call them colleagues, not customers. We call them sponsors to our budget or doing a cross charge instead of selling. But at the same time, having also worked on both, I do see many differences. So I'd be super curious to hear your perspective on it. Like, what do you find, I guess, very different about that work? How did you approach it? Maybe some interesting stories if you've got a particular product you'd like to talk about.
Sure. I actually was very lucky both in MasterCard and Salesforce, where I have had the experience to work on products that either started as internal and became external, or they became external products and then we had to pivot back and expand it to internal. So it's one of those things where I've seen both sides for the same product, I've seen both sides of the equation. And one of the things that I've really learned is typically when you think about product development, you have this product development life cycle where you start with discovery, then you go into design and then develop, and then you want to grow and mature the product and finding that product market fit. This whole life cycle is something you have to do no matter what, whether you're building an internal product or if you're building an external product. Obviously, there is a lot more rigor that you need when you go towards the external side. You need to make sure you go through the legal hoops. You make sure that, especially when you're talking about data, you have enough data governance guidelines and principles that you're following. In addition to that, you also need to have automation and operations in place because you have SLAs and things to deliver on time. And if you miss, the impact is pretty bad, and you don't want to have a bad impression and bad reputation and some of those things. You have a lot more leeway on some of these things on the internal product side. So what I have, like in Salesforce, when like the product I'm working on, it started out as this internal product. When I started at this company, it was a small concept, and we had to build it to the internal audience. And we actually grew the product pretty well. We had almost like 5 to 10x growth. We started having a place where people started reaching out to us with features even without us going and advertising the product a lot more. There was a lot of organic word of mouth growth that was just happening with the product, which almost made us feel that we had reached our product market fit. And then there was this executive who came to us and wanted to take this product external because it was so successful internally. And then we went and launched the same product externally, and the product did not work well at all because our persona completely changed from internal to the external audience. We had to simplify the product significantly. A lot of assumptions we had about the product, of the prior knowledge you need to have of the product, completely changed going from different personas. So I think one of the big learnings I had just going through this journey is both internal products and external products have different personas, different needs, and slightly different things that you need to go after to even deliver the product. And as a PM, you need to constantly pivot depending on your persona, depending on the market, depending on the use cases. And it's kind of fun in a way because you're constantly in this discovery mode, and doing interviews and talking to customers really helps you understand and discover what the product needs are, and like try to pivot to the right direction. And that's also the interesting part of the job. So just doing that pivot and making sure that you build a product for the right audience, for the right use cases was my biggest learning. And just going through that experience has helped me understand that building a product is not like a sequential flow, but it's a very, very iterative flow that you need to constantly experiment, pivot, and come back, whether that is going from external to internal, going from internal to external, and just go about the process of constantly being curious about what your customer needs are and building the right thing for the audience.
That's super interesting. And I really want to jump on that topic of kind of talking to users and getting feedback. But before that, I don't know if you're allowed to tell us, but what is this product? Are you allowed to share some detail just to put some color in the example?
Sure. So this is a product that we give to our customers in Salesforce. It's called the Customer Success Scorecard. It is available. Like you can think of the product as being very similar to a credit score, where we give a rating about your health on how good you're performing in order to make sure that you're completely successful in using the Salesforce product itself. So we measure against different dimensions such as adoption, expertise, and technical health. And the specific area I own is called the technical health. So it measures how well you're using Salesforce in terms of the different performance metrics that you're having, the reliability metrics that you're having, and we try to give you a rating on how well you're doing so that we drive transparency between Salesforce and our customers, and also help our customers have a shared responsibility in helping them grow and helping us grow eventually.
That's very cool. So you mentioned that it started as an internal product. Was it literally the same kind of scorecard just for your internal, like, I don't know, your account managers to see how is each customer doing and maybe whose hand do we need to hold better? It was the same kind of information and now you just gave it to your customers. Is that right?
Exactly. So it started out as an internal product to help our support teams prioritize the customers that they have to go after. And when we went external, we just exposed the same thing to our customers so they themselves know where they stand, and they can also self-diagnose and also talk to our support team. So it's a more shared responsibility of us getting them to success rather than us just giving this to our success team who eventually go to customers.
That's really cool. I guess for everyone listening at home, it's a good question to ponder. If there's something that you've built, but it's not for your end user, but more for yourselves to make your life easier, maybe it's to automate some process, give visibility on data quality. Is this something that actually your customer might benefit from as well? I know for sure we have some stuff that at the moment is not mature enough to be customer facing, and we're very much developing it with a view of eventually giving it to customers. But in the meantime, it's super useful just to make sure that we send customers the right data. We maybe proactively advise them on what they should be receiving from the get-go. But I really like this as a kind of sniff test to apply on internal products and tools that you might have. Very cool. Earlier, you mentioned that one of the things that's super important to how you're developing this product is listening to your users and doing that continuous discovery to understand what works and what doesn't. I'm a huge advocate of this. I don't think you can just decide top down like it's an academic exercise what works. Super curious to hear. Tell us a little bit, what does that discovery look like? Is it about collecting quantitative data? Is it about doing user interviews? Is it a mixture of both?
It's definitely a mixture of both for my experience and what I have done. And like a mixture of both has really helped me. I have been on the team in places where we had dedicated user researchers. But then as a product manager, I actually have felt that me personally going and doing interviews has really helped me more than outsourcing this job to a user researcher or to someone else on the team. Especially when I start on new products, or especially when we are in these critical pivot points where we want to make decisions whether we want to continue in a direction or not. Like doing these interviews personally has helped me really get a feeling of what the customer is really wanting from the product more than just reading through documentation and just getting the second-hand information. So I'm a high advocate of doing discovery practices and constantly talking to customers. In fact, I used to set targets on a monthly basis that I had minimum number of customers I just wanted to talk to all the time. going back to the previous question, we were talking about internal versus external products. And one of the spaces I have been in even when we were in external products, we had internal personas who were kind of proxies to some of these external personas. And you have a lot more easier access to these internal personas to talk to. So when we usually do customer interviews and when I usually go and talk to folks, I have a mix of internal and external personas because you get a lot more different perspectives. So segmenting users and understanding different perspectives really helps in getting that diverse thoughts. And a lot of times internal folks can tell you a lot of nuances that the external customers might not want to tell. So if you have proxies of external customers internally, they are a great resource to leverage to really understand what the customers are feeling and implement that on your products as well.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I see it all the time. It not just internal versus external. There's some people that are just more open to being blunt, and others that maybe think they don't want to hurt your feeling, or maybe it's going to affect some commercial negotiation, whatever else. They keep their cards closer to their chest. Makes a lot of sense.
I have also had even when you go and talk to customers, you'll start realizing that every company has different cultures, and there are some cultures which are very open, some cultures that are not open. So, it's a mixed bag. So you need to just understand how to probe, how to read in from what they actually say, or not just listen in equally to all sorts of customers. That's another learning you'll have by doing your user interviews yourself.
For sure. That's so true. So we talked about the differences of internal and external products, and how externals are harder. With internals, you often get access to stakeholders that are more friendly. I'm curious, were there things that you found, besides access to users, easier when you were on the internal sides compared to a product that has external users?
So one thing that stands out for us internal, the advantages of building internal products versus an external product is, in an internal product, you can continuously iterate and add features or add capabilities, change the way the product works a lot faster, and it's easier to do change management. It's easier to communicate to folks when you bring in change. It's very, very hard to iterate when you have an external product, because there are so many other downstream applications of how the product is getting used. And every time you bring in a change, you have to do a whole lot of communication, change management, a whole lot of processes in order to bring in the change, and you can't just iterate and try new things. So often what we end up doing, and what I do in my product right now, is we almost use the internal version of the product as a playground for ourselves, where we can continuously iterate, try out new things, experiment that for internal folks, see whether it sticks, see whether it grows, whether that's the right feature, get it to a good state, and then release it to the external audience. So that way you can have the best of the both worlds, and also continue to understand two different personas.
That's really cool. And that kind of dogfooding, trying your own product, it makes so much sense for me. I'm curious, what's this sort of lag? So if you release a kind of beta feature for your internal users, how many weeks or months might it be until it makes its way into general availability? Is it like a few weeks, or could it be much longer than that?
It's definitely in months. It's not in weeks, at least for our products. Our release cycles are like once in 3 months, where we want to bring in major changes. So yeah, that's a pretty long time for us to bring any change, unless it's like critical bugs. Our general approach is to not bring in a lot more features beyond our typical 3-month release cycles. So that's where we try to experiment a lot more on the internal side and have everything ready. And then in that 3-month release, we try to bring the features that actually work.
Makes sense. It's like a very thorough version of user testing, I guess, because people are actually using it, not just testing it. So continue on the theme of kind of exploring the contrasting experiences that you've had. How have you found the difference working now for kind of big tech, digital first company like Salesforce to a company like MasterCard that I'm guessing is more of they're very tech heavy now, but of course they didn't start off as a technology business however many decades ago MasterCard was founded.
Yeah. First of all, I would say I worked in big tech and MasterCard, which I would almost put in sort of a financial world bucket. And I think big tech and finance are probably the two most mature industries in terms of understanding data, investing in data, and actually effectively using that to drive their business. So I think I've had experiences where either of these industries are actually already pretty good compared to where they do stand. In terms of the major differences between the two types of cultures and two types of industries, what I've felt is like typically when we think about data products, I can almost bucket data products into two groups. Data products that actually support business decision making, which is mostly in the space of analytical products. And then there are data products that can drive automation. And this is more the world of machine learning and AI and all the other new technologies that are coming up. From my experience, the financial industry, and I've seen this very good at MasterCard, they are very mature in terms of using data for driving business decision making. So every single team in MasterCard used to somehow use version of some data to make business decisions. So I think people there, all the leaders there, really understood how to make decisions using data. But at the same time, not a lot of these decision-making data products need to be very, very well-mature software products per se. They can be slightly scrappy. They are just meant to support that decision, but they don't need to be stood up on a very regular basis. So that's the kind of products I used to generally see in MasterCard. It's slightly different on the big tech, where actually their maturity is very much on the automation space. So they have very, very good maturity of how to build data products that can actually drive automation, or products that stand up and can be operationalized very well. Even data products that can become software products eventually. So that's the big difference I've seen from the culture standpoint. And what that means from a product management standpoint is, if you go and read up about general software management practices, all the different standard books that you read, they very much talk about the typical software product management practices. And you can see that very well done in the big tech companies. Like, you have this whole team that actually has come together with all these engineers and developers and designers. They come together to build a product. But at the same time, in the finance industry, the maturity of building the product is not always in that grain, unless it's a very important product that the company wants to really sell to external customers. So that's it can be a little chaotic sometimes in those, or it can be a little scrappy. But nevertheless, you still have access to good data, and you're still building products that can drive a lot of impact. That's one of the major differences. And obviously, finance is a lot more regulated industry. So I think working at MasterCard, I had to work very, very closely with legal, with data governance. I had to meet these teams almost on a regular basis to just iterate and build the product. The regulation is not that rigorous in the tech world. So I think we have a little more room to iterate and go faster and build products that can go to the market, and then we can continue to iterate from there.
I'm really curious, touching on that last topic of regulation. For me, for sure, if you're a software team, then yeah, if you're heavily regulated, there's probably tons more governance hoops you need to jump through, approvals you need to get. And of course, that'll be true for a data team as well. But one thing I've seen about businesses that are heavily regulated, like financial services, is those regulations also enforce a much higher quality of data, at least for a lot of cases, not everywhere. And so in a way, being in a data team, you're kind of benefiting off that because people are forced to have well-governed data sets. There's data stewards assigned to them. Are you seeing that? Or would you say that in your experience, the kind of data quality, I guess, in the big tech companies you've worked at is also something that's prioritized highly?
I 100% agree with what you just said. The data quality and the rigor that was there at MasterCard is actually unparalleled to what I've seen anywhere else, and that is definitely a result of the regulation that's there in the industry, because it's the regulation there is almost like a well-oiled machine. When we have to bring in new data, when we have to bring in new sources, when we have to just process anything, we need to do a lot of steps up front to even get it to the stage where people can start using it. So definitely as a data team, you'll benefit a lot from having cleaner data, having higher quality of data to work with. Definitely a benefit. It's not that well defined in the tech world. You have to deal with a lot of data that you need to sit and process upfront before you even start using it. So definitely a benefit of regulation on the financial services space.
Yeah, makes sense. For me, in a very different dimension, I'm grateful for the privacy regulations we have in Europe, partly as a consumer, because I like knowing what companies can and can't do with my data. But it also means that I'm almost never in a situation where maybe, I don't know, someone from the sales team or partner wants to do something with our data that would make me feel a little bit iffy, morally speaking. I can very clearly point to the boogeyman and say, oh, it's not me thinking we shouldn't do this. It's the regulations. And we're all going to get fined a huge amount of money if we try to go against them. And in that sense, it's nice. Of course, there's a lot more bureaucracy and checks that you sometimes need to go through, but I try to remind myself the benefits that brings and what makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely. But what I've seen is even the tech industry is actually getting mature right now. Like, for example, my own team now has expanded. We were just the data analytics organization, and now we have a very dedicated team just to deal with data governance. There is a team that's just looking at data quality. There is a team that's meant to just look at data stewardship and things like that. So I think the tech industry is also starting to realize that data quality, data governance are pretty important, and they're starting to put enough investments in there to make sure that these things are well thought through before they go into the market.
For sure. And like you said, when things go to the market, there's a higher expectation. You've got SLAs, you've got requirements to comply with. Like for me, I know a lot of the time, if I'm just complaining about data quality, it's not that people don't care, but they kind of go, oh, yes, we know data quality is not good. And then when I point to the deal value and say, look, there's this many $1 million that are at risk of being lost because of this particular data quality problem, that's what really wakes people up. You know, you get senior executives from my side going to our sister companies that supply us with the data, and the conversation just gets escalated to a level that before it just wouldn't. And for me, what I learned is not just that this is important, but to make sure to talk about it in the language that business leaders talk in, which is how much money is this impacting? Is it going to lose us a customer? Is it going to piss off our kind of VIP, like our really large customers or something like that? And that tends to bring results.
Yeah, and it also leads to the brand image that you have. Actually, data has a huge impact on your brand itself, especially for big companies. trust is their number one value, and data actually can help a lot in driving or decreasing the trust with your customers. And I think if you can actually communicate that angle as well, if you cannot quantify the dollar value so easily, I think the brand reputation and the trust can be easier selling points that you can actually tell to advocate for data quality and a higher degree of data governance as well.
I love that. Right. I think we could go on and talk about data quality for probably another 40 minutes. But I'm conscious of time. So why don't we move to the last bit of our chat, which is a lightning round. So first question, where can people find you if you want them to? Do you want to direct them to your socials or your company?
Yeah, sure. I'm very active on LinkedIn. At least I'm a passive listener on LinkedIn very regularly. So if folks want to reach out to me on, I think LinkedIn is the best platform. By the way, Nick, I also got inspired from you, and I've created my own TopMate page. So if folks are interested in one-on-one data mentorship, product management mentorship, or wanting to transition from a data scientist to product manager, I've set up a few sessions. So anyone is interested, they can reach out to me on schedule time on TopMate. But LinkedIn is a place that I'm usually regular and I respond there.
That's awesome. I really love that you're paying it forward and helping others in the field. Next question. What's a tool or technique that has really helped you in your career as a data product manager? I'm leaving this broad. I don't know if it's a piece of software or just a concept that you found useful.
I don't know if I have specific tools per se that actually would stand out a lot, but there are definitely some of the things that I have done that people have really appreciated and have constantly recognized for it. Some of the small things. So, for example, every time I'm in a meeting, I try to make sure I take notes and I pass on that meeting notes to all those who joined. And this has helped me in a lot of ways. One is usually when I join new teams, like this is an easiest way that I can actually contribute to the team. And it also drives a lot of alignment. A lot of issues that actually happen when you're building a product is miscommunication and misalignment between folks, even though you would have generally agreed. You might not have agreed exactly on the same thing. So just writing things down and then communicating that goes a long way. And especially when you're dealing with a lot more senior leaders, this is a nice way for you to stand out and make sure that they recognize who you are and start listening to you as well. That's one thing. The second thing that people have told that I do a good job is actually creating good decks or creating good documents. And I think one thing that I actually am good at is actually understanding who my audience is and create content according to their needs. So I've actually had to do decks for very, very senior leaders, executives, and C-level folks. At the same time, I've had to create content and documents that I have to write requirements for my engineering teams or write documents that are very detailed about how we came to the solution. And being able to go up and go down and building some of these things actually also has helped me gain a lot of good reputation with folks and has helped me get a lot of impact.
I love both of those so much. I can't stress just how much I agree and endorse them as things that you should do, as things to encourage others in your teams to do. I mean, writing it down is so powerful. And yeah, I think it's probably the most accurate stereotype about data folks and probably technical folks more generally, that we're not very good at presenting to our audience. You know, we want to show just how hard the problem we solved was. And meanwhile, the executive is like, I don't care and I don't really understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What about, so you mentioned...
sorry, I was just going to say it's a hard skill to master. I definitely don't think I am expert in that, but it's a journey you need to take to just go through to make sure that you constantly try and iterate to actually get to like being good in writing documents, understanding your audience, and catering to the right folks.
100%. I've accepted I'm never going to be 100% good at it. It's just about getting a little bit better every day. So earlier you mentioned that you know the kind of standard product management books, and I wanted to ask, is there a book that you would particularly recommend to data product managers, or some other piece of media or content?
So I have a few types of resources that I actually feel I've gained a lot and I've learned a lot from. I have subscribed to Reforge, which is a platform that trains product managers. They have really, really good content in there if you want to go very deep into specific topics such as product strategy or getting into product growth and things like that, that you can actually go very deep and understand for your very specific use cases. I think the content there is some of the best that I've ever seen. I also listen a lot to Lenny's podcast. I have found that a lot of guests that he come are highly reputed guests. And LinkedIn is, again, the platform I use a lot. So what I usually do is whenever I listen to Lenny's podcast, I try to start following those folks that he interviews on LinkedIn. And most of these folks generally have good content that they write. And that is how I've actually discovered a lot of books as well. So love the books from Marty Kagan, like Inspired, Empowered, all of that stuff. The other book I would vouch for is Continuous Discovery Habits from Teresa Torres. That's also a great one to really understand how to get better at user discovery and talking to customers.
Awesome. I love all those recs. I was on Reforge last year. I listened to Lenny's podcast all the time, and both Marty's and Continuous Discovery Habits are some of my favorite product books. 100% endorse these recommendations. Awesome. Ganesh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having this chat. Thanks for taking the time to speak. And yeah, is there anything else you want to?
I mean, I really had a nice time talking to you. Thanks for having me. The one last thing I actually want to say is, I know we talked a lot about product management today and product management practices. But if you've read Marty Kagan's Inspired, he talks about this concept of product mindset, and he talks about this concept of empowered product teams, where it's product mindset is not just the job of a product manager, but it is actually the job of everyone on the team, whether you're a developer, whether you're a designer, whether you're a PM. And I 100% agree with that statement. So for anyone listening to this, whether you're a PM or not, the one thing I would actually like to say is product mindset is the core takeaway from product management in general. And it's something that you can practice whether you're a PM or not. And just practicing that can take you a long way in your career, wherever that is.
I love that. Ganesh, thank you so much. And thanks to everyone for listening at home.
Thanks a lot, Nick.
Thanks so much for listening. Hopefully you got some great actionable insights out of this episode. We're so excited to dig deeper into data product management and its many facets. If you want to engage more with the show, you can follow us on LinkedIn and check out Soda's website at soda.io for more related content around product management in data. And if you are a practitioner bringing product management practices to data and want to potentially be a guest, please check the show notes for a link to apply. And as always, we strongly encourage people from underrepresented groups in tech to apply. Much as I'm a handsome devil, we don't want all our guests only looking like me. So again, let's get excited for more digging into data product management in action.